ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the July 14th edition of Beyond the Headlines. My name is Colin Dowe, and I wish you a very warm welcome and thank you for joining us this evening. So whether you're tuned in to GBN Television, listening on GBN Radio, or logged on to any of our social media platforms, thank you for sharing your Monday evenings with us. This evening, we discuss a very important and topical issue, matters of allegiance. And with us, we have Attorney at Law, Anande Trotman Joseph.
Yes, thank you for welcoming us here.
Absolutely. And Mr. Ruggles Ferguson, I'm going to give you the full title, KC.
Yes, thank you, Colin, and good evening, listeners and viewers.
Absolutely. And it is a pleasure to have you both here to discuss this important matter. And there have been quite a lot of conversations ongoing about the oath of allegiance and what it should be, what it should not be, how it should be addressed, etc. And from the information out there, this effort is being led by the Citizens for Constitutional Reform. Now, who are the Citizens for Constitutional Reform?
Well, we are chaired, meaning the person who's leading this process is Dr. Francis Alexis. Of course, he is a well-known attorney at law and someone who has really stepped up in terms of public service here in Grenada, political service. He is a global expert on Grenada's constitution. And those of us who have joined him, many of us are lawyers. So, for example, you would see Mr. Ruggles Ferguson, Casey, as we heard. We have Jerry Edwin. He's another lawyer, well known to your viewing public. We have Professor Wendy Grenade, and she's a professor who specializes in politics and governance. And we also have someone who is a journalist, Paul Roberts, well-known journalist of some vintage. And we have Joseph Ewart Lane. He's a well-known figure in the state of Grenada, and I like to say he understands this constitution from both sides. But we will discuss that a little later. And myself, I am Anande Trotman Joseph, and I am an attorney at law, as we have already shared.
Okay.
And that is basically who we are.
All right. I like getting some of the pink elephants out of the room immediately.
Of course.
The individuals that you spoke of, they aren't ordinary citizens. So these aren't citizens for constitutional reform because you seem to be a special, I dare say, elite group of individuals. It's not Joe Blow, that's making up this move. So how do you respond to the claim that this is a group that is not necessarily connected with we the people?
To whom much is given, much is expected. So, speaking for myself, I'm heading to nearly 4 decades of being a lawyer. And yes, of course, I'm in my office where I do my legal practice. But also, another aspect of being a lawyer is going out and sharing and educating the public. And those of you who know me here in Grenada know that I've spent a lot of time advocating for children's rights, women's rights, anti-corruption. I have done a lot of work with the Grenada Bar Association on governance, good governance, the rule of law. And right here in Grenada, I believe it was 2018, Ruggles Ferguson right here, as outgoing president, handed over to me a project for constitution reform during that time. And I, like Ruggles and Dr. Alexis, for example, Dr. Grenade, we went all over Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique to engage and meet the people and to understand what it is they understood their own constitution to be. So I have this copy of it, and I hope that viewers have their copies, because I usually say that your Constitution should be the document after your Bible or your holy book that you should have very close to you wherever you are. So, yes, some people may say we're special, but we're not special just by being special. We are special because we spent a lot of time, each of us in our own different ways, going out, understanding what people understand the Constitution to be, and telling them as persons trained in the law, because yes, this is a legal document with a lot of legalese in it. And even lawyers sometimes do not understand what's in it unless they get a translation too, or have gone to school to learn. But Ruggles, over to you on this.
And as you said, just share, Ruggles, like, when was the Citizens for Constitutional Reform? When were you constituted? And just expand a little bit on, well, when and why.
Yes. Thank you, Colin. The Citizens for Constitution Reform was in a sense formally established in May 2024. And the purpose, as you say, their names, it's about constitution reform. Constitution reform involves the law, and therefore it is no surprise that you have persons who are trained in law leading that process. If it's a medical project, we expect the doctors and medical personnel to be at the forefront. But it is not closed. As my friend Anande noted, that you have Professor Wendy Grenade, who is a political scientist, involved Paul Roberts, in fact, who is a journalist, and who actually, as Dr. Alexis always says, the drive for this change in the oath of allegiance came about as a result of an interview that he did with Paul. And Paul said to him, you know, all the lawyers in Grenada, we have 50 years of independence, and nobody can find any way to have this constitution change or something change after 50 years. And this was part of an interview. Mm-hmm. And that led him to go home and, as he said, go through the Constitution to see some of the low-hanging fruit that you can actually change. Okay. And so the Citizens for Constitution Reform is really about constitution reform, about changing our Constitution. It is not a static document. It is a living document that evolves and require changes, just like other ordinary laws require changes over time.
Typically, when we see changes to laws, and there are different ways, you can go to Parliament and effect change. Quite often, case law influences these changes as well. How have you engaged the public? Because one would think that the people's document, that sacred book, should almost come bottom up, as opposed to a group of legal practitioners saying these are the things that you ought to change, have addressed for your good.
Right. Well, interestingly, Colin, you may hear the concept about patriation of our Constitution, because the history is there for all to see and learn. Our Constitution is basically a document handed to us. There was some engagement by those who, at the time, formed the committee prior to independence, having talks at Marlborough's house. But this Constitution is an order in council from the United Kingdom. It is not an act of our own parliament. In fact, I saw, interestingly, a letter or a publication recently where a particular lawyer was quoted, and even him seemed to have gotten it all wrong, because it's part of the package of independence. So our people, it did not come from the bowels of our people.
Right.
So it's a document, and the constitutions of most Commonwealth countries are the same.
Right.
Because they went through a similar history from slavery, colonialism, and the United Kingdom, Britain, of course, the mother country, the colonial power. So we have similar constitutions throughout. This is not just a Grenada thing.
So when we say then, if one is to hold true to that argument, that the Constitution did not come from us, but we inherited it by virtue of our quest for independence, then shouldn't adjustments then come from us? Because something should come from us.
Well, of course. Well, and that's the whole idea of constitution reform. That's the whole. People have different views on constitutional reform and how it should be achieved. So, for example, you had Professor Simeon McIntosh, who was deeply involved in the constitutional reform process until he passed away in 2013, March 2013. And Professor McIntosh's view is that the Constitution ought not to be changed piecemeal, but you should have a new Constitution, right? And very noble thought, very noble objective, and in fact, it's the ideal. However, you have the experience of St. Vincent, 2010, and Constitution reform, where they tried exactly that, to change several things in the Constitution, and you need a referendum. The result is you have 20 items for change. People agree with 18, fundamentally disagree with 2, and vote no to the entire package.
Well, we'll get into we'll get into that. But let me just get a sense as to the level of public engagement that you have had as the CCR.
Well, maybe if I can just come in here, Colin. We individually and together, we have been doing our part, because this is not a political effort. This is a civic effort. Of course, everybody might belong to wherever we belong, but we want it to be understood that we are doing this because we are encouraging what I would have to say true Grenadian patriotism. 51 years after a constitution and not a single reform, and we are still pledging allegiance to a queen, that's what the Constitution says, and king, no king. However, wherever we can, we have been doing shows. We've had one of our members opening up his own social media show to us, and that is Joseph Ewart Lane. We have been meeting with different organizations during the 50th anniversary activities far and wide across this nation. That has been happening. Only this last week, we have been meeting with the Media Association because we accept that we are just a few people. However, with the assistance of the allyship of the media and other civic organizations, we know that this word is going out very far and much wider than we can do it going to little town halls, although we do believe that we can do that as well. And we have been doing this consecutively over the years, whether individually or as the CCR or with any other organization or group, including the National Anniversary or Independence Committee last year. So whenever, wherever, however, we are sharing the word that yes, Grenadians, 51 years along, perhaps we need to end excuses for just staying as we are. So
just share, why do we need constitutional reform as you engage the public on this platform? Either of you, Ruggles?
Yes. Let me just say, last year, May, the CCR did an entire week to coincide with the Marlborough House Conference that led to independence, and to explain that entire process and its significance in relation to the Constitution. It was a whole week on different media houses and other one-on-one engagements. Probably that was the most significant, sustained one-week program held by the CRC and the CCR, and mainly too is public education. So the question
is why do we need constitutional reform?
We need the Constitution is the supreme law. The Constitution is the supreme law, first and foremost.
Right.
We are people. We have come from slavery, right? 400 years of slavery. Then colonialism, slavery, colonialism. We were a colony. We were owned by the United Kingdom once upon a time. To ultimately self-government, internal self-government in 1967. To full independence in 1974, 7th of February 1974. We became an independent sovereign nation. We have independent votes, free to join whatever organization we wish to join. We are an independent sovereign country. And our constitution, therefore, as we evolve, remember slavery started out with the slaves were owned. There were no rights. There were no fundamental rights and freedoms. Slaves were owned. In the colonial powers owned us, right? We are colonies of the United Kingdom. Now we are an independent people. 51 years after independence, and we have the same, exactly the same constitution that we started off with in 1974. And you know, part of that constitution as an independent state is that we pledge allegiance. And not everybody, but for example, our parliamentarians, our ministers of government, and several state officials pledge allegiance to the king.
I still would ask the question, because I'm not getting the why we need constitutional reform. So I'm going to repeat it, because yes, slavery, but the constitution didn't come from slavery. The constitution did not come from colonialism. It was the way forward, right? So I will still ask, why constitutional reform? I'm going general. We'll get on into the
yes. So let me correct you there. We didn't just jump from this. All of these things are connected. All of these, slavery, and if we don't join the dots, then we never understand the significance. So you need, for example, what is the best system of government for our people, right? This is an issue that has to ultimately be determined by our own local conditions and what ultimately is best for us. So, for example, in the 2016 Constitution reform, just some items that emerged there. One, fixed date for elections. Two, you had fixed terms for Prime Minister. You had 3 changes to the Electoral and Boundaries Commission, that structure, where from an experience of 15 seats, 15-0, and you can have a party getting 15-0 in power, and you can even have the opposition getting more votes, their mass votes, than the ruling party. And the voice of those people, the whole issue, their proportional representation and what it means in such a structure. The issue of whether we should have a bicameral or unicameral parliament, as St. Kitts and St. Vincent has. Issues that fundamentally affect governance and government, the structure of the state. Right? All of these issues are issues that touch and concern our people on a daily basis. And therefore, our system of democracy is based on a Westminster system. Right? It's an important system that we use here. So, public education, and that's why at the end of the day, that you need constitutional reform. The courts, for example.
Am I hearing that we need to examine the Constitution to ensure it is still fit for purpose? And if it's not, then we make adjustments. Is that the argument you're making?
Of course. Because it's a living document. The Constitution is not like our ordinary laws. It's not subject to the same rules of interpretation as ordinary laws of Parliament. It is not subject to the same approach to change it. So, for example, because it is the supreme law, it stands higher, in a sense, than any other laws. And that's why those who are entrusted with the power to make laws for the peace, order, and good government of the country, in Section 38 of our Constitution, you must not make laws that are inconsistent with the Constitution.
Right.
I would want to come in to say that this is also an issue of patriotism. We keep hearing about these 51 years and the 51 years, and I think we now understand that because of our own inactions, because of the excuses that why we can't do it this way or that way, or for some political reason or the other, we just leave it as it is. It means that for 51 years, everything stands still. The language, for example, the language in this Constitution speaks to a Governor General in a masculine way. It speaks about he and him and he shall do that. But some many years after, time has overtaken that in reality. After
Grenada had Dame Hilda Bino, by the way.
She was a governor and not a governor general.
But even when this was written, we had leadership coming in terms of the office of governor from a female, is what I'm saying.
And it should have been expected even then that with at least 50% of your population being women, at least at some point we should have foreseen that there would be a woman who's governor general. I'm saying that from this context to say that this, as Ruggles is saying, has to live with us. How many persons were alive 51 years ago? We're finding that there's a disconnect with our young people and this Constitution. Even when we went out to do Constitution reform and public education and continuing public education on constitutions, or this Constitution, you don't see so much of a younger audience. You're seeing the older heads coming forward, some of them saying, well, leave it as it is, some of them saying, change it. But where is our young person in all of this? It has to move.
Let me ask you this. How can constitutional reform assist with national development? Because as we have this movement towards constitutional reform, it can't be constitutional reform for constitutional reform's sake, right? So grounded in my term, Grenadianism, and working towards fostering national development, making sure it's fit for purpose. Share with the audience, how can constitutional reform assist with national development?
So, for example, in some of the other constitutions of the region, where there are issues of indigenous rights, there are issues of biodiversity, land, etc., the constitutions speak to that. The economic rights of the people, the trade union rights, in more detail, because they would have been considered by the population, in some cases by referenda. And therefore, the will of the people becomes embedded, or as we lawyers say, enshrined in the Constitution. But if it does not go out, if everybody is not involved, and all we are hearing are excuses why we should not even change an oath to a king, and I want to bring something alive for us. I remember I was in public service, public legal service in the Attorney General's chambers and the Ministry of Legal Affairs after we had Hurricane Ivan in 2004. Again, some of the young people here may not have even been born then, but they might be listening to us. Who came to our rescue to fix our Governor General's home? Let's ask ourselves these hard questions. Yes, there is a a king, and then there was a queen who is represented in Grenada by a governor general. To this day, the home of the queen's or the king's representative has not been fixed, it hasn't been repaired. It is now going into historical decay. Again, we have to look at our courts. Who came to assist us with our courts, our parliament? In the end, there were other nations who assisted, for example, with the new parliament, beautiful parliament that we have, but who we pledge allegiance to. They're saying, get up and get. There are other states in the Commonwealth. The Great Britannia is not who we were in 1973 when we began these discussions. It is expected that we Grenadians, we Caribbean people, we have to now do what we have to do for ourselves. As Bob Marley said, and I want to throw this out because it is culture, it is about Caribbeanism, it's about Grenadianism. He said, emancipate yourselves from mental slavery. The British said, here, take your independence. Why are we holding on to the king's trousers, not wanting to let go when the king is saying, look, we gave this to you in 1973. Make what you can of it. And that is what we are trying to say. This is the kind of advocacy we of the CCR are encouraging and asking Grenadians to pay attention to.
No problem. Ruggles, I have to throw this one in because we talk about allegiance, we talk about the oath, and I want to delve a little bit more into the oath in our next segment. But I believe you are required to take an oath as KC. How do you reconcile your advocacy now for change of oath as a member of the CCR when, as Ruggles Ferguson, you took an oath to the king and his council?
Well, you have to take an oath based on what exists. At the end of the day,
but
if
could
you
you not have refused?
Hold on. If you have to become a member of parliament tomorrow, you're required to take an oath.
Right.
And either you choose between one, not taking the oath and not becoming a member of parliament, because each parliamentarian must take the oath of allegiance and the oath of office.
Right.
And you take the oath that exists. At the end of the day, would you say, for example, that you are not taking it because you are not prepared to take an oath to the king? But at the end of the day, what exists.
But are we not making a distinction between one who offered themselves to serve the people of Grenada, and so I'm with you there, and the individual Ruggles Ferguson? Because that one is an individual decision to take that oath in order to become a member of the King's Council, as opposed to one who chooses to give of themselves through service, and hence this is the existing oath. Don't you see a difference between those two?
Well, I can tell you, I won't go into it tonight, but the history of my issue, and I don't think it's again proper for a program with the title, right? But at the end of the day, it was accepted, and it's not. This is not through the king. This is the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court through an independent Judicial and Legal Services Commissioner and Chief Justice. It is the formalities, but it is not a situation where the king in the United Kingdom says, well, listen, be a part of my...
We might be careful, you know, because one can argue the same thing with the oath of allegiance for the ministers. It's not really the king.
Yeah. No, so, but I'm saying, yes, I'm saying, so it's a similar issue, but that does not mean, right? That does not mean that you do not advocate change. It is what exists. And what the issue here is, how do we change what exists to reflect what we want? Trinidad, for example, in 1976, September 1976, moved from a constitutional monarchy to a Republican government. Right. That is why it's referred to as the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, but they were a colony of the United Kingdom. They gained their independence in 1962. Jamaica, Trinidad and Jamaica were the first two countries in the region to gain independence. Jamaica gained independence in 1962, is not yet a republic. There's hot debate in Jamaica right now. Trinidad preceded many years before. But Jamaica changed its oath of allegiance in 2012 from the king to Jamaica. Dominica, so it's all different systems. Dominica gained independence in the late 70s, early 80s. They moved straight from the monarchy, Commonwealth of Dominica. Instead of a governor general, they have a local president. Belize moved from taking the oath to the king, small steps. They all have GGs, governor general. St. Lucia did it, but you still have a governor general. This issue is simply one of the form of oath, not removing the oath, but to whom you take the oath.
Okay. I just wanted to add very quickly here, Colin, picking up on the KC. As Ruggles shared, there are some of our CARICOM sister nations that are republics, and he named a few of them: Guyana, Trinidad, Barbados is the most recent, Dominica, Trinidad and Tobago. And in those territories, because there has been constitutional change to republics where they have presidents instead of governor generals, their senior lawyers are called senior counsel instead of king's counsel. We have been reluctant to go the whole way, and of course when that happens, for sure, all lawyers who are preferred with these titles, even then, all who are KCs now will be called SCs. That's in our future, and it is, of course, up to us.
All right, it's time for us to take our first break. So viewers and listeners, we'll take the first break and we'll come back. Matters of Allegiance. See you shortly.
Whether you're refreshing a bedroom or giving your home a bold new look, the Color Shop has the perfect paint and tools to make it happen, inside and out. With quality finishes for every surface and accessories to match, we make painting easy from start to finish. Whether it's a DIY weekend or a contractor starting a brand new project, the Color Shop is the trusted choice.
Have you heard about the new Soft Weave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Soft Weave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue, available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Soft Weave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information. Are you longing to taste authentic, flavorful dishes from Thailand? Then look no further. Konthai, the newest restaurant located at the back of Galleria Mall top floor, is the place to satisfy your taste buds for Thai dishes that are well seasoned with fresh local spices. They offer a great selection of sumptuous dishes that will tantalize your taste buds. Visit Konthai today because the food is good, the ambiance is great, and the staff friendly. Available on Carabites and Yogo Grenada. For more information, call 456-0074 or visit konthaigrenada.com or stop by the new Galleria Mall, Grand Anse St. George. I'll meet you there.
JKT Entertainment is bringing the heat. It's time to feel the sound and smell the burn. Bass and burn, cars and noise. The automotive experience of the year. July 26th and 27th at the National Stadium Car Park. It's 2 days of adrenaline-fueled madness with over 30 show cars from Trinidad, including Lethal Auto, MacGyver Sounds, and Simplicity Creations, plus Grenada's own beasts, bringing the noise.
He'll say your back, come touch me then.
Early bird tickets are just $50. After that, it's $60. Get yours now at GoToFed.com and all authorized ticket outlets. Gates open at 11 a.m. on both days. Sponsored by Country Cold Store, SP's International, Campari, Stag, Rubis, Fast Print, Waggy Tea, GMC, Rainbow Janitorial, Eco Blue, Spice Style Automotive, and McIntyre Brothers.
Viewers and listeners, Matters of Allegiance. That's the discussion this evening on Beyond the Headlines. Quite a bit of debate. Anande, if you can, because you indicated that countries like St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Jamaica, and Belize made changes to their oath. And we have maintained our oath as per the Constitution in 1974. Yes. So share with the audience what, let's say, one of the other islands. Maybe I think you have St. Lucia at hand.
Yes.
And then what do we have?
Sure. So we literally sit in the Southern Caribbean,
right,
and all of the nations immediately proximate to us. They swear to their own country. Guyana, Trinidad, Barbados, St. Vincent, and St. Lucia. That's just immediately near us. And let us zero in a little more to the Eastern Caribbean, of course, to which we belong, the OECS. And in St. Lucia, for example, this is what they would swear to if they're becoming a minister or high official. And I would just quote, I, say for example you, Colin Dowe,
I'll take that,
do swear that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to St. Lucia, that I will uphold and defend the Constitution and the laws of St. Lucia.
Right.
So that is what they say. So by section 65 of the Grenada Constitution, it says here, a minister or a parliamentary secretary shall not enter upon the duties of his office unless he has taken and subscribed the oath of allegiance and the oath of office. Mm-hmm. And we are speaking about the oath of allegiance because the oath of office is straightforward. It speaks to the Constitution of Grenada. So why then can't the oath of allegiance, we are saying, not also speak to Grenada, like St. Lucia, like Guyana, Trinidad, etc.?
Before you read that, because
yes,
I'm noticing the distinction.
Yes.
Our Constitution says two oaths.
Yes.
Oath of allegiance and oath to the office. What you read previously from St. Lucia was oath to the office. Have they abolished the oath of allegiance, or what's the change
that
there?
That is their oath to allegiance. That's what they call their oath of allegiance. It's to the Constitution of St. Lucia.
So unlike the Grenada's Constitution, yes, that has two oaths, are we saying that the St. Lucia Constitution only had one?
I am not saying that they wouldn't take an oath of office, but because we're focusing on what an oath of allegiance is, notwithstanding I had to refer to the section which speaks to what we swear to when we are going into office. So yes, there are usually two oaths, mm-hmm, but we are focusing on the oath of allegiance here in Grenada now to share what it is and letting others know that across the Southern Caribbean and further afield, Jamaica, Belize, Dominica, and so on, that they would swear to an oath of allegiance to their own constitution and their own country.
No, the reason why I'm teasing
yes,
this out, and forgive me,
sure, no problem,
is because a minister of government,
yes,
Grenada,
yes,
likewise swears an oath in terms of his duties, his or her duties,
yes,
to uphold the Constitution and laws of Grenada.
Yes.
So we're not referring to that oath.
No, that is why we zeroed in as CCR on the oath of allegiance.
And hence I'll be remiss not to ask whether or not in the likes of a Jamaica that still has a Governor General and others, are there two oaths that are taken? One can be effectively said, one by a member of Parliament and another by a minister, because you can be an MP and not a minister.
Yes.
So the two oaths assumes that the MP is also a minister, which is not necessarily the case.
Not necessarily the case. So I will now read for us what the oath of allegiance of Grenada says. And again, this is in our Constitution, which has chapters, for those of you who may not have yet read it, in Grenada, our viewers. There are chapters, there are sections within the chapters, that's what they refer to. They are also parts or sections of the actual Constitution, and then there are schedules. And it is Schedule 3 to the Constitution that gives the example or the required oaths that we are speaking about. So let me read for all of us and to remind ourselves what it is Grenada's oath of allegiance says. So, I love your example, hopefully, do swear or solemnly affirm, because there's some folks for different reasons who affirm, that I will faithfully bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, her heirs and successors according to law. So help me God. So there's no reference to Grenada here, but to Her Majesty. We've heard...
I didn't hear any reference to God in the St. Lucia quotation?
No.
Okay.
But to each their own. Again, they would perhaps hold the Bible or affirm. So even though there are some denominations, some religions, even though some will hold the Bible in the right hand and swear, we see it in the court where we practice, others who are perhaps more religious than some would affirm because it goes against what their denomination says. Yes. So that basically is the oath of allegiance, which we as members of the CCR would like addressed. Because 51 years later, in circumstances that we have already discussed, we don't know how many Grenadians alive now have met Her Majesty or His Majesty. Do they know where is that allegiance being placed if there's no familiarity, there's no contact? And His Majesty and Her Majesty before him would have given us the handshake and say, go and do well with what we have given you, but we are holding on.
Right. By the adjustment, what's the importance in making this adjustment, Ruggles?
Yes.
And I say adjustment, but really it's an amendment. Let me just use the appropriate term.
Yes, it's an amendment, and probably just to make the point. The amendment is the insertion of one word to replace the words Her Majesty the Queen. Well, it's now the King because the Queen has passed on. So what is being replaced in the oath? His Majesty the King, his heirs and successors. Those combination of words, the proposal is to replace it with Grenada.
Right.
That's all.
Let me ask this, because I'll be honest, it has troubled me as well. So the oath of office we're clear on, because that is service to Grenada, keeping its constitution and laws.
Right.
Very
There's
clear.
no mention of the King.
And what we heard from St. Lucia was just that. What we have not ascertained is whether there's a second oath for MPs. Because at the end of the day, an MP is giving service in His Majesty's Parliament. He's under the governorship of Dame Cecile, who is our Governor General. And that Governor General is representative of the King. Now, I struggle to understand why we advocate for just this change, which almost seems hypocritical, without advocating for the wider change. Because if we cannot swear allegiance to Grenada in His Majesty's Parliament. We ought to be in Grenada's Parliament. And hence, the head, being the GG, ought to be president. In other words, why not move towards a Republican state as opposed to this piecemeal, which is contradictory? Because
welcome to the club, Colin. You know, welcome to the club of reality. It means that, as the saying goes, and even Dr. Alexis made mention in the session with the press, is one step at a time. Because to move to a Republican state, you need a referendum.
All right.
Right? So, again, this small change is a significant change. It goes to identity, it goes to self-respect, it goes to self-esteem. At the end of the day, part of the problem is that you can't continue to have referendum after referendum after referendum.
Why did those referenda fail, though? Why? I mean, is it that it was too complex? Were there too many things in there? Why did they fail? I mean, let's go one issue.
Let's go, right? So, the Macintosh philosophy is, let's change the whole constitution. And I think no one can quarrel with that. St. Vincent chose to change the whole constitution, but as I indicated, if there are 20 things in there, people support 18 wholeheartedly, but fundamentally disagree with 2, they vote no to everything.
But didn't we have a situation where we bulk things which to the population appeared unrelated, and hence that was confusing to us? In other words, when we vote for A had 17 subsections, so we couldn't clearly vote for A because things that seemed to be unrelated was packed in there.
Well,
was that part of the challenge, Grenada challenge?
Right. So that's a view. But I'm saying, I'm just talking facts. Right? Not expression of an opinion here. Learning from the St. Vincent experience, then there was 7 bills. Say, listen, let's just focus on 7 things. 7 things that people can relate to. And that's where you had fixed date for elections, fixed term for Prime Minister, CCJ, Privy Council, etc. Then, the talk at that time, too many things, right? So it's not the whole thing. Individual items, 7 bills, too many bills, 2016. You move now to 2018, right? Say one thing, CCJ Privy Council. It did the best in 2016 referendum. Let's focus on that. Everybody agrees. Then you have an analysis of the act now. Everybody analyzing. Vote no. There will be a certain wariness on the part of any government to enter that arena, even though everybody recognizes its importance. But you had one referendum, 2 years after you had another. Okay, so let's see now the areas of the Constitution you can change without a referendum. Then the argument becomes, you need a referendum. This is a simple, straightforward issue. We have a country that has been anti-colonial for close to 100 years. And you go back to struggles like Tubal Uriah's Buzz Butler, Marichaud, Gary, Revolution, Bishop George Brizard. It's not, and these are not radicals, but clearly, at the end of the day, even more recent governments Dr. Keith Mitchell, this government, we're speaking about the age of reparations. No. And there will be an issue where people are talking about consultation, about changing from an oath of allegiance, from king to country. Come on. And you say, we have to have a consultative process. That is a formula for saying, hey, nothing that you present, there are those who oppose and will constantly oppose. Then you have the politics inserted in it.
Let me ask this. Why will anyone oppose an allegiance to country?
Boy, I am trying to find out the answer to that question. Okay. Quite frankly. And at the end of the day, so the issue is, right, the issue, and this is the irony of it, Colin, the irony of it is either you support the change, and you might have a philosophical reason why you oppose it. But nobody coming out openly and say they oppose it. Everybody support it, but process and consultation. But
let me ask this, and I still go back to what seemingly appears to the hypocrisy of it. Why isn't the CCR going for a full change? And I say a full change. It's part of the, for example, it's part of the change for the Governor General's oath to change in terms of the amendment.
Yes, sure.
And if that is so, how can we justify His Majesty's appointee not swearing allegiance to His Majesty?
No, listen, we are an independent sovereign state. There are certain structures taken out of the colonial era. Governor General has a role to play, the Governor General's office and so. But at the end of the day, right, this is a matter of conscience. And look at
I'm with you with conscience. I am with you with conscience, and I'm asking, how can a reasonable person expect His Majesty's appointee to not swear allegiance to His Majesty? How can a reasonable person expect the members of His Majesty's Parliament not to swear allegiance to His master? Well, I'm saying His master. That's a Freudian slip. But to His Majesty, simply because the oath of office speaks to their assignment, Grenada. But the allegiance speaks to the boss as we have it now. And any change seems hypocritical, and that can be an argument. So why not go after the change that allows Grenadians to swear allegiance to Grenada up and down?
Yeah, but it will ultimately happen. And that's why, 2016, so we need more public education. You feel the people talking about more public education in 2016 do anything between 2016 and 2018? 2018 come, we need more public education. Right? 2025, we need more consultation and public education. This process started, right, on the issue of the oath of allegiance in 2014, in 2024, sorry, January 2024, because there was a proposal to get it in for the 50th anniversary of independence. Now, at the end of the day, right, we have certain structures. We have a ceremonial structure where the Governor General is the head of state. Head of state in protocol comes the Governor General, then you have the Prime Minister, etc. Now, the people of Grenada, we have an anthem, we have a pledge. Hail Grenada, land of ours, we pledge ourselves to thee. Right? You pledge, in the pledge, you pledge to Grenada.
Correct.
These same people, elections, because elections are about voting in members of parliament. And we missed that point over and over. You voting in members of the House of Representatives.
Right.
And that parliament, out of the House of Representatives and elections, will come a Senate also. So you have the bicameral structure. The lower house, House of Representatives, and the upper house. They now voting in by the people, then pledge allegiance, not to the people who voted them in, not to Grenada, but to a king. And it can be changed. And that's the point. The Constitution is not cast in stone. It can be changed. Section 39 provides for the alteration of the Constitution. The Constitution, and that's really the issue here, the Constitution, to change it, there are what you call deeply entrenched sections of the Constitution.
Right.
So to change the Constitution, at a minimum, you require the 2/3 majority in the House of Representatives. Right? 2/3 of the majority of the membership of the House of Representatives, 2/3 of 15 is 10.
Right.
Right? If you are changing a deeply entrenched section, then it requires, apart from a 2/3 majority in the House of Representatives, it requires a 2/3 majority voting in a referendum.
All right.
Right? The law provides for that. The government sets the legislative agenda in the country. It's the executive. That's part of the executive function, unless there may be other, you introduce private members' bill.
Right.
The government has determined, listen, you do not require a referendum. We agree that you do not require a referendum.
Why was these matters, though, in the referendum prior? And now we're saying, because from some of the comments, people believe, okay, you're trying to slip this through the back door, because in 2016, it was part of the referendum. Why wasn't it, what light bulb went on all of a sudden to see that it doesn't have to be part of the referendum when we had it in 2016?
Right, it was a subsection of one of the bills.
Yes.
But it has been determined, when looking at it closely, that as an item it does not require a referendum. The debate about a referendum, I don't believe it requires a referendum. Some might believe it requires a referendum, but that's not even, I'm not the authority to determine whether it's a referendum or not. Courts are the guardians of the Constitution.
Right.
And I'm not, when you interpret in a Constitution, there are rules. Just like everything else, there are rules. And that's why it's so difficult to engage someone that simply wants to argue that referendum, turn to page this and so. That's not how constitutions are interpreted. You look at the words. And that's why many times it's said, the law and logic at times differ. What you think should be the law based on what you see as logic. That's not the law. So at the end of the day, it is determined that is not a referendum. That's a major issue. That you shift from a fundamental position, which is what is the main issue. Do you support pledging allegiance to a king or to Grenada? But that's a question for the parliament. The Constitution has entrusted that decision to Parliament. It has said in section 28 of the Constitution, 38, that Parliament that's the function of Parliament. It's a law-making arm of the state. It says you make laws for the peace, government, order and good governance of the country. And in the case of a constitutional referendum, you need a 2/3 majority in the House of Representatives. So you can lawfully pass it. If you have to abolish slavery, an important issue as that, you say, before we abolish slavery, I think we need a referendum for that. That's where leadership comes in. And that's where you exercise leadership. Because we have been a country, apart from our anti-colonial history. And that's why history is important. That's why you must contextualize the Constitution in terms of our history and our historical development and evolution. And now we are 51 years as and independent people, Parliament can make certain changes without the expense of a referendum, and they make it. They are authorized to make it. So if there are those who are so fundamental about it, that hey, we need a referendum before we made a change, then go to the court. They are the guardians. But at the end of the day, it is the executive as the policy-making arm that is bringing it to the Parliament and hoping for the Parliament support. And I hope in this on this matter that we don't go back to a 2016-2018 and say, well, listen, in 2016-18, when we did it, they give us trouble. So it is now our time. Somebody actually said to me, listen, I support it, you know, right? But you see them fellas, they're too wicked. When we tried to do it in 2016 to 2018, they didn't support us. And if we support it, what it means is more support. They look good, right? We cannot sing to that level.
Agreed. It's time for us to take our final break. When we come back, you certainly will be able to weigh in because the Matters of Allegiance is there. 440-1252. That's the number you'll call. We'll be right back.
Distributed by Echo Blue Limited. Visit us on the Lansopine Main Road or call 405-4818.
Attention all divers, snorkelers and underwater enthusiasts. Effective May 15th, 2025, all visitors to the renowned Mullinair Underwater Sculpture Park will be required to pay a small fee of US $3.50 or EC $10 per person. These fees are essential to support the ongoing maintenance and repairs of the sculptures, as well as the development of new features to ensure the park remains a world-class attraction. Payment can be made through the Grenada Tourism Authority's online payment portal, available on the Pure Grenada website, www.puregrenada.com. We thank you for your support in enhancing this extraordinary underwater product. This announcement is brought to you by the Grenada Tourism Authority and the Ministry of Tourism, dedicated to protecting and conserving Grenada's resources for the enjoyment of all.
Need to check your bill balance? Use the Grenlec mobile app. Open the Grenlec mobile app and tap the icon labeled Balances at the bottom of the screen. View your bill details, including your current bill balance, the due date by which you must settle your bill, the amount and date of the last payment you made. It's quick, easy, and available 24/7. Convenience at your fingertips.
Welcome back, viewers and listeners. Matters of Allegiance. That's our discussion. I believe we have our first caller, so let's just go straight to the phone line. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah, good evening to the panelists and to you, Mr. Dowe. Mr. Dowe, I heard Mr. Ferguson said that the Constitution has a provision where they can make alterations. And he also said that it was given to us by England. So it means that England although they gave us the Constitution, they gave us the leeway to change it, to make alterations. So it's up to us now, the people of Grenada, to make those alterations or to the changes. I think one of the reasons why people oppose that, people have I think because of the colonial experience we had, slavery. There are people who still believe that England is the best country for them. And now with this migration, I show some of our people who goes in the army in England, and people can go there without a visa. Some people don't want to lose that kind of status. So they're thinking if they stop pledging to the king, then it might be difficult for them to go to England. So is there a backlash from this? Is there any way we can have a backlash if we pledge allegiance to Grenada? Is there anything significantly that could be to our detriment?
Okay, thank you for caller. What will we lose?
Diplomatically, I can't see that we would lose anything. Like I said, when Grenada received their constitution, as the caller is rightly saying, and this is exactly what we're advocating about, you had the leeway, the right of way to own your own constitution. You had the right of way to make amendments to what would be contained in this constitution, and you had the right of way, which did happen, as we heard, on 2 occasions in the 51 years of going to referendum.
Right.
I just wanted to make a quick point on the referendum issue as to why we can't carry everything. One, it is extremely, extremely expensive. And where does the money come from to hold a referendum? It comes from taxpayers' monies. Some people argued before that, look, we rather have this to drive down this money to drive down our cost of living rather than do this, not quite understanding the importance of a living constitution to themselves and to their futures.
Okay. We have a caller online. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Dowe. Good evening, and good evening to your guests.
Good evening.
There are so many things to comment about this, and so many disingenuous things I've heard coming from your guests there and so on, but I wouldn't go into it now. I'd like to ask a couple of questions. 2 of them, yes-no questions, and 2 information questions. So I'd begin with the first. Can any of your guests there tell me that the words that I'm quoting here, re section 39, subsection 1 of the Constitution of Grenada, is really there in text? That section, or pardon, subsection refers to the Parliament having the authority to make alterations to any provision of the Constitution, but with a caveat. And here is it. It's a prepositional phrase. And it reads as follows. In the manner, note the manner, the definite article specified in this section of the Constitution. Are these words there in the current Constitution before you, lady or gentleman?
Okay, go ahead with the other.
No, but Mr. Dowe, tell me, I want to know because it depends on the questions that follow.
Well, if you say it's there, I will take your word for it, citizen.
No, but all right.
I will take your word for it.
Take a look at this.
We have other callers, so while they look, ask the other question.
Well, let me throw my questions and then they will answer.
Yes, please.
The second yes-no question is as follows. In the paper presented by Alexis et al., they use 4 provisions of the Constitution to make the case, namely 20, 40, 65, and 83. But as far as section 39, subsection 5 states, in what is the manner specified, it tells us, and in reference also to, what you call it again, appendix, or what is the other name again?
Schedule.
1. Caray. There's 1, 2, and 3. Under 111 there. What are they called again?
It's the interpretation section of the Constitution.
Huh?
It's the interpretation section of the Constitution. 111.
No. Schedule, pardon, brother, pardon. Schedule 1. That's where the so-called manner specified outline manner. Right? But there, no mention absolutely is made of 20, 40, 65, no 83. What's there? 19, 21, 57, 23, 35, some in 40, some in 50, etc., including 111. But 111 is the only one that has a caveat, and it reads as follows. Section 101, in its application to any other provision, foregoing provision mentioned in this schedule. Question, yes, no question. Have you considered this in your interpretation of the case presented for the changing? Yes. Then if I may ask you, finally,
simple question, simple answer.
As an information question, can you prove to the people of this country that the text, the script, the lyrics of the oath is the same as taking the oath, and if it is a provision or not of the Constitution? I trust that my questions are understood. Mr. Dowe, next time we want a debate on the matter, not just this little shortcut thing. It wouldn't work so. Thank you very much. I hope my questions are understood.
Thank you very much, Citizen Rollo.
Thank you, Citizen. And I always admire, as you very well know, your energy. And what these exchanges lead to is people being more familiar with the Constitution. Yes. But I really respectfully beg to disagree with your manner in which constitutions are interpreted, with all due respect. Let me just explain this. It's very simple. Mm-hmm. The problem is it's being made complicated. Listen. There are certain sections of the Constitution, and those are sections listed in what is called Schedule 1.
Right.
And in Schedule 1, to make a change to those sections require a referendum.
Right.
And in Schedule 1, they even have Schedule 2, right, where you would need a referendum that deals with the Electoral and Boundaries Commission, Section 56 of the Constitution. But Schedule 3 is not mentioned there. And why? Why? Because what is being changed, simply put, is the form of the oath. Right? So, for example, if in an entrenched section of the Constitution, it has parliamentarians must take an oath of allegiance, right? And that's in an entrenched section of the Constitution. Nobody's changing that. Parliamentarians will still take an oath of allegiance. What is the form of oath, the prescribed oath in Section 3? That is being amended, that does not require a referendum.
Okay. We have another caller online, so let's take that caller. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Yeah, good evening. How are you all doing?
Very well, thank you.
I just want to say good night to you, Dowe, and your panelists. And that's a very good program. I love that program because first I must say, I'm an African to the bone. And we all are African people. And we have to start thinking like African people, like black people. We have this colonial master teaching that we ancestors learned from the colonial masters, and they hand it down to their children, and the children hand it down to their children. So we keep teaching our children the same thing we get from our colonial masters. So we have to get rid of that. Grenada is ours now. The Queen of England, they helped slave our ancestors. We have to focus on that and start educating the youth about these things. So the constitutional reform is very good, but it wouldn't be easy. But it could be possible. It's not impossible. It wouldn't be easy, but it could be possible. So we have to stop swearing allegiance to England. Because these are the people who enslaved our ancestors. Because that is how they come to own Grenada. They take people from Africa, bring them to Grenada, walk them forcefully, disrespectfully, treat them like nothing, and take all the riches and go to Europe. That's how Europe get rich now. Europe don't really have no riches enough. Africa is the richest continent in the whole world. And yet for all, they classify to be the poorest. That is impossible.
Okay, thank you very much, caller. And certainly the point is being made in terms of the patriotism that is being called for.
Yes, and I would add that at this point in time, the King, who is now the head of the Commonwealth, there is a discussion being led by our entire Caribbean mainly on reparations, making the point now about what our last caller shared about. It is really for all of us, and I do have to add that, of course, there are persons of other descents besides Africans who still live and dwell with us here in Grenada, but we're trusting, as we danced about Marley's song that I talked about, the redemption song and the natural mystic blowing through the air and so on, that there is a critical mass of conscious people in Grenada who understand the importance for these kinds of changes, not only for this generation, but for the generations to come.
Okay. Are there other low-hanging fruits? Because this was defined as a low-hanging fruit. The bar stipulated is not as high because we don't have to go to a referendum. We do not need the two-thirds majority coming there, just parliamentary approval. Are there other low-hanging fruits that are important towards bolstering our sense of independence, our Grenadianism, and ultimately can lead towards that national development, which should be our goal and thrust?
Yes, and I don't want to say too much about it tonight, but yes, there are others, and it relates to citizenship and how part of the challenges of Grenadians, for example, who are born to parents abroad, and how you get citizenship, that there are some issues. After this issue, there will be other issues, and certainly I wouldn't see any challenge with that one. But
we hope not.
But I'm saying, is there a challenge with the King, Colin? Really and truly, this is unbelievable, you know. People talking about manifesto, and the government and have that party having a manifesto, and then consult with the people. On consultation, you know, this issue, there was debate since January 2024 about it. But and the irony, and you know the irony? When the people are called to consultation, I'm not showing up.
But would you agree, like we saw in Barbados, and one can argue even with the Grenada independence, when a political party makes something a campaign issue and they're voted into office, they can consider themselves empowered to deliver on their manifesto. So if it's not, though, then one can say, well, where did this come from? Whose tune are you dancing to?
On fundamental issues, right? On fundamental issues. But this is about an issue that goes to the core of our own independence and national identity. You know, there is no issue about support. You know, you hear the few voices that make loud noises and make it an issue of referendum or no referendum. Now, at the end of the day, if the state, listen, there are so many fundamental laws that pass through Parliament. Right? And you know, a bill, because you know, a law starts with a bill being introduced in Parliament. And for ordinary laws that don't touch the Constitution, you know, simple majority in Parliament, you know.
Right.
So you can have, and those present and voting.
Right.
So not a two-thirds of the entire Parliament present and voting. Okay. So you could have.
We have another caller. So let's take the caller. Good evening, caller. Welcome.
Yes. Good evening. I'd just like to add my 2 cents from a layman's point of view. I think we need to do 3 things. The first thing is, we need to go to the Parliament and ratify the Constitution by adopting it into the Grenada books. Right now it's an order in council. That has never been ratified. We do that, then we have a simple referendum on two items. Why I believe the first two referenda failed is because the government of the day hijack it and they sell the thing to us like how people sell in the market. One beautiful mango, one not so good, one overripe, and they say to get the beautiful one, you've got to take all three for $1. Had they put the CCJ as a line item by itself, it would have passed. Had they put the oath of allegiance by itself, it would have passed. And that's all we need to do. Because of the nature of Gary, it was done that the people, there must be a 2/3 majority of the people of Grenada. You're saying this other country did it, but some of them have just a simple majority can change the constitution. So that's what we need. Ratify the thing first, then you put the CCJ as a line item by itself as a final court of appeal, and then you change the oath of allegiance. Simple. Thank you very much. Good night.
If I may, as they say, hindsight is 20/20 vision. There are lots of theories, there are lots of reasons that we can give as to why those referenda failed.
Right.
Now, on a practical note, this was the first time in, over 40 years that there had been any attempt to change this. And because this was done initially in 1973, coming into force in 1974, there were many areas that needed to be touched to make our constitution here in Grenada a modern, quote-unquote, modern constitution. And I believe that would have encouraged the framers of that reform process to put as many items on the table. In hindsight, that may obviously, it did not pan out that way.
To a chief of police.
So we're left with some very dated, outdated historical terms, as I even refer to the Governor General being referred to as he and his and him and so on. We tried again, exactly as the caller suggested, put it now only to the one-line item, and that too did not fly. For me, I thought perhaps that came a little too closely after the first referendum, but again, there was that general enthusiasm, the Caribbean folks, our brothers and sisters from CARICOM and so on, were encouraging, look, at least go to complete your circle of independence, to have your own court of the highest court of appeal being the CCJ. So we can say, we can theorize, we can come up with all of these reasons, but the truth is, because of the expense, because of what it takes a nation to mobilize its people, normally these referenda will take about another 10 years or so on before they come up. Government literally has to do fundraising to have one of these referenda. You have to make sure that the people, the temperature is being built up again to even be receptive to that.
Let me ask this, Ruggles. Is the CCR going to lead an initiative to take us to approval of a Republican state to save costs at the next general election? In other words, asking that as we vote, we go to the polls once. We vote for MPs and we vote on Republicanism. Is this something that is doable? Is it achievable? And should we go after it?
Colin, you seem to have some good ideas. I think you need to be drafted onto the CCR. So that's
I'm not an attorney at law. No.
Right? But the point I want to make, right? The CCR is simply a voluntary group lending its expertise free of cost, right? Nobody had to listen to us, So all the issues I've been doing consistent public legal education in a structured way over the last 25 years, consistently on the Constitution and other things. And when I do public education, I stay away from giving personal opinions. I say the law as it is, not what my opinion of the law, and when interpreting the law, you have to deal with case law too, and how case law evolves, and so we have a set of experts out there who not necessarily trained, but don't want to learn because they are right. You have these subject matter experts now, so they have become the experts about constitution reform, and others like Dr. Alexis know nothing about constitution. Listen, Dr. Alexis, he doesn't have to do this. Right? He doesn't have to do this. Dr. Alexis was a university trained lecturer, the master's program and everything, right? And he has volunteered his services to share. We all feel it a sense of duty to impart the little that we know and that we have learned to the population. But nobody is saying anybody has to accept what I say or Dr. Alexis says. They may feel they're right and certainly proceed. At the end of the day, in referendum 2016, when it failed, I was back public legal education the week after. 2018 failed, they say the constitutional gurus lose. Yeah, there, no problem. I ignore that. I continued what I see as my duty for 8 years, 2018 to 2025. That's 7 years. I've been doing it consistently. If this does not go through, hey, and it's really a matter for the executive and the parliamentarians. But then you continue it. It may happen 50 years from now after we are long gone, but we made our contributions. And I think that is what is important.
And that's what I want to get to, because part of the conversations in recent times is that Vision 75. How do we see Grenada? And the type of Grenada we would want to leave. Are there other areas of constitutional reform that we ought to be taken on in order to ensure that the Grenada that we engender today is a good Grenada moving forward for our children? But also, will there be advocacy for things that are already enshrined? And I'm going straight to local government. Local government is enshrined in the Constitution, but it has not been operationalized. Should the CCR be taking on something like that as well, saying, let's honor this because it's good for the people?
Yes, we can. But again, we have to ensure that the logistics would be in place, that there is budgetary support for such an issue. But from a purist legal point of view, of course we can advocate for what is there. And as Ruggles said, we are doing this all voluntarily. I, too, like Ruggles, I've been doing this since I literally graduated from law school. Straight out of law school, I was drafted in to assist with public legal education. That was since about 1987-88. So that's how long I've been doing this. It has become like a ministry because we don't get paid to do this. And that is why I started out by saying, to whom much is given, much is expected. We're paying it forward. A lot would have also been invested in us by persons who mentored us. Even agencies, for example, some of the US agency, the British agencies, some of us would have gotten scholarships, opportunities to attend conferences, and our work has taken us beyond even just sitting here. It has taken us even globally in some cases. Why? Because this is about service. And I want us to think about that. And this is not just about us and our egos or just wanting to be brighter than or better than. It's nothing like this. This is really a true act of humility to come to the people, come to the citizens and say, this is what we know. We are trying to make it simple so that you too can understand.
Okay.
And just before you go,
no, I'm going to give you the last comment.
Oh,
no, the ladies always have the last. No,
okay.
You have the last comment. I'm going to ask Ruggles for his closing comments to the public, because you will have the last word.
Thank you.
Right. So as we close, because time is quickly upon us, just some closing thoughts, some closing comments, and basically to reaffirm the need for us of Grenadians to move stoutly forward in having a constitution that reflects us and can guide us as we go forth.
Well, I could say, first and foremost, that the CCR as a collective and many of us individually, despite whatever happens, we will continue our education of the public on the Constitution. I've done scores of programs on all aspects of the Constitution, and we alone can't do it, because the Constitution is so fundamental and it has to start in schools and be part and parcel of that whole process. The focus of this change is inserting one word, Grenada, to replace the few words that reflect pledging allegiance to the King. And it affects, ironically, the single largest block of people to be affected by this change are parliamentarians. It will be ironic if the people of Grenada who pledge allegiance to Grenada, to the flag, who sing, "Hail Grenada, we pledge ourselves to thee," would be demanding of our parliamentarians to pledge allegiance to the King. You know, there are certain legal ramifications in any change. Parliament has the power to do it. And I believe the vast majority of the people of Grenada, and I say over 90%, will support this move. This is the kind of move you announce one day in a big meeting as a policy statement and everybody go wild. Right? This does not require, this is not law. This is about conscience. This is about identity. There's not much law in this. You know where the law comes in? About how you do it. And the legal people have said you can do it without a referendum. Why are we going and argue with everybody? In fact, my view, and I would say that my view doesn't matter on the law, unless the court, because if the court disagrees with my view, then that is the view, because the court is the ultimate arbiter. So if people feel strongly about it, then go to court, and I like to see who would really be brave enough to stand up and say, I want to continue to pledge allegiance to the King. There is a grouping in the country calling themselves the Grenada Monarchist League. You know, and interestingly, it is a faceless, they have a website, it is a faceless, nameless organization that is operating behind the scenes. Right? Obviously have some resources, but at the end of the day, it's something people support, and this is a conscience issue. Just ask yourself, what do I want to see this change, or do I not want to see it? And it has to be respected, whatever your view, but I believe that the vast majority of Grenadians want to see it, and let's not get caught up with the legalese about referendum or no referendum, because at the end of the day, those who are advocating the change, those who can make it, which is with Parliament, the executive has set the agenda, they say we want to see that change. I think it's an admirable step. They say we don't need a referendum, and I think for good reason, and that is how it goes like all other laws. So let's not get caught up with referendum versus no referendum. I think it is a good debate and a good exchange, because whatever section of the Constitution we seek to change, then there is discussion, and that is good because we learn more. But let us not hold up this change simply because some feel that you need a referendum to do it. others feel that you don't. So how do we resolve that question? Go to court if you feel so strongly about it.
Okay.
Thank you, Colin. And I just want to say that this is an issue of the amendment of an oath that is bigger than politics. It's about country, it's about nationhood, it is about being proud to be Grenadian. So I would want everyone to understand that. We of the CCR, we are just a spark. And I'm saying to you, especially to our young people, in the words of a very famous soca song, run with it.
Thank you very much, Anande, Trotman, Joseph, and Ruggles Ferguson for sharing about the proposed amendment to the oath and just how we ought to go about making these changes and the importance of making adjustments to ensure that this living document remains relevant. To you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for sharing your Monday evening with us. Interesting discussions, and it is critical that we continue to pledge our support for Grenada in all matters. So whether it's a discussion on the Constitution, whether it is ensuring that our environments are clean, because we can debate this and be bad Grenadians elsewhere, but commitment, patriotism, critically important. Thank you so very much for joining us once again, and I look forward to being with you in the next 6 days, 22.5 hours. Take good care.